The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
President Trump defending Elon Musk's work with the White House as his company's stock, Tesla, plummets and faces boycotts. Tesla was down 15% yesterday, the steepest drop in 5 years. It is down 45% since Trump retook office in January. The automaker also the target of multiple attacks since January. Vandals hit a dealership in Colorado. A woman allegedly threw Molotov cocktails at the car and spray painted the word Nazi on showroom vehicles.
Violent attacks against Tesla got even worse over the weekend. A Colorado dealership that's already been targeted multiple times by anti-Elon radicals was hit with another attempted firebombing over the weekend.
Loveland police say the arson started from an incendiary device between two vehicles. This comes after 4 similar incidents targeted the Tesla in Loveland since the end of January, with some consistencies found by LPD in the incendiary devices.
They are generally filled with gasoline and lit with wicks, and we have seen that they can be extremely dangerous to those that are anywhere nearby.
When rabid anti-Elon zealots aren't staging sit-ins at dealerships, they're attacking regular folks who are just trying to drive around in their cars. Like this man who was driving his family around over the weekend when a maniac ran at his car and started banging on their windows.
The goal here is let's not have America go bankrupt with waste and fraud. So that's what I'm here for. And we're making good progress.
Yes, you are. You're going to go another year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, really, I just don't want America to go bankrupt.
So it's a call to action. You're hearing a call to action.
Yeah.
You giving up your other stuff? I mean, how are you running your other businesses?
With great difficulty.
And that's probably why it exploded. But the thing to keep in mind is my suggestion for Elon, his response to all of this was rockets are hard. And Mr. Musk, if they're so hard, why don't you go back to your day job and work that out and leave those of us who do government to do government? Because you can't do both. And clearly you're failing right now at both. Your rockets are blowing up and the government's blowing up.
So far, we're making good progress, actually. So our savings at this point exceed $4 billion a day. Mm-hmm. So it's very significant.
You think you'll wind up getting to $1 trillion?
Yeah.
Of savings?
I mean, unless we're stopped, we will get to $1 trillion of savings.
Unless we're stopped, and there's plenty of people trying to stop him. In fact, you look at all of these attacks nationwide, it's coordinated. And you have to wonder, where is Donald Trump's DOJ? Where's Pam Bondi on this, or Kash Patel? These are attacks coordinated by the radical left. And they just get a little slap in the wrist, and they're right back on the streets the next day. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show. You can get to the live video stream of this program at trumpetdaily.com or at the Rumble channel, rumble.com/Trumpet Daily. A lot to get to on today's show. We appreciate Sam Livingston stepping in yesterday morning for the program. But as always, the news stack is thick. Here are these organized protests, these sit-ins, these attacks on Tesla vehicles, the collapsing Tesla price, stock price, even threats on Elon Musk. And as he said there in the last bit of that cold open, I mean, unless we're stopped, we're going to do a lot of good for the country. Why would people attack him? He's trimming the fat. I've got another clip later where Musk says even Biden's people investigated government spending and found that there was like $500 billion in fraud. Even Joe Obama acknowledged this. And so here comes Doge. They're actually finding it, highlighting it, And you would think people would be rejoicing. But no, so many people are on the take that they're fighting this. In some cases, violently fighting this. I know there's lots of local investigations happening in Colorado and wherever, but where's the DOJ? I mean, look at how hard Obama's DOJ went after young. It's easy to say, well, if young, indoctrinated college students storm into a Tesla facility, that, we want to give them a slap on the wrist because they're just dumb college students. But where was that kind of leniency with the young people, young fathers that went to the Capitol on January 6th? Joe Obama's DOJ, they went hard after those people and tried to lock them in prison for years. There was no get out of jail free card. This would be an excellent opportunity for the new DOJ to lower the boom on this left-wing violence. You look around and you see, it does seem like the radical left has regained its footing to some degree. Is Donald Trump's government going to allow for this? I mean, he's come out and give a strong endorsement to Elon Musk. He certainly has been a big defender of Musk and his statements. But you would hope there'd be some action. CNN says police across the United States are investigating a series of attacks on Tesla showrooms, charging stations, and Tesla vehicles as vitriol escalates against CEO Elon Musk. You heard in the cold open there, they were laughing, having a good time when the space vehicle blew up. Why don't you just stick to your day job and let us, the bureaucrats, run the government? Let us, the bureaucrats, just continue to spend wildly so that there's waste and fraud all over the place. And these people, these agencies, they hate being exposed and they hate losing their power. It's like Musk says, I mean, if you just turn over the authority and the power to the bureaucrats, you don't have a democracy. You have a bureaucracy. That's what it's become. It says there have been peaceful protests at many Tesla locations, which involve demonstrators carrying signs and chanting, "Elon Musk has to go." Well, that's not the worst of it, as you heard in the cold open. They're calling him a Nazi. I mean, how is this not getting the attention of the DOJ? Nazi? Death threats? In Boston, there's the individual that set the Tesla charging station on fire. You heard some of this in the cold open. In Portland, someone fired shots at a Tesla showroom. Are we to just give slaps on the wrist for all of this? A dealership in France, cars were lit on fire there. In Seattle, there were 4 cyber trucks set on fire in an industrial yard. Carefully coordinated. Newsweek says this: X is experiencing its 3rd major outage of the day, with users reporting widespread login and loading issues. The hacking group Darkstorm team has reportedly claimed responsibility. Well, Musk said this attack on X yesterday that the IPO addresses were from Ukraine. Is that going to get anyone's attention at MSNBC? Ukraine? Germany's been stirring things up since the meeting, since the showdown in the Oval Office. And Musk says this was a coordinated attack on X, possibly even coming from a government of a nation somewhere. It was that huge. It was that big. He talked to Kudlow about this yesterday in that sit down. Play a clip. Well, let's start with clip 2.
I want to begin, but among other things, everyone's attacking you for your position. What are you doing in the government? There was a cyber attack on X today, which shut it down and may have been foreign sourced. Yeah. It's a big story. You want to give us a moment on that?
Well, we're not sure exactly what happened, but there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
originating in Ukraine. Why Ukraine? Ukraine's trying to get the United States to continue sending money. There's peace talks starting today. Trying to bring on a ceasefire. You'd never know it, talking to European leaders. The narrative is firmly established. The United States has abandoned Ukraine. And here's Rubio with representatives from both sides, somewhere in the Middle East, I forget where, but trying to hammer out a truce of some kind, trying to get both sides to compromise. When Europe does it, I mean, it's just perfect. Everything's just right. Everything's so balanced. You can't explain all these events without understanding that there is a real spirit world. You know, there's verses in the Bible that talk about people worshiping the beast power. The beast power is now forming in the heart of Europe. And here it's this satanic system that wreaks havoc all over the world. How could people worship this? I think Sam alluded to this yesterday. You look at some of the comments underneath our program, which got a lot of views, 115,000 views on Rumble over the weekend. The one where we titled it, Germany started World War I, World War II, and now they want nuclear weapons. It's astonishing how many people left comments saying, how dare you say Germany started those wars? Okay, so there's a little more nuance with World War I, but evidently there's plenty of people out there that can't even bring themselves to say that Germany started World War II. To say the truth, that Germany started both of them, well, you invite a lot of criticism, don't you? How do you explain this? How do you explain today that Donald Trump or Elon Musk, they're the Nazis, they're Hitler, but what Germany's doing is perfectly fine. Germany's all in on building up the military machine. I guess I've got to go forward in my notes. I'm already bouncing around, keeping the guys in the booth on their toes. This is from GermanForeignPolicy.com. German foreign policy advisors and experts urge massive rearmament and much higher troop numbers. They warn Germany will otherwise lose influence and the EU will disintegrate. So it's got to be all or nothing. If we don't go all in, the union disintegrates. This is terrifying stuff, just looking at the history. But then you look at the history and people dismiss it. Oh, that's not true. How dare you say Adolf Hitler started World War II? I'll get to World War I in a second. In Berlin, government advisors and foreign policy experts are calling for a massive increase in the military budget, drastic cuts in social spending, and the vigorous indoctrination of the population. In other words, maybe indoctrination is a strong word, but in parentheses, German foreign policy says a change of mentality. We've got to change the thinking of the people. Everybody's got to be on board with this. Well, newsflash, prophecy says everyone will be. So much so that the world will worship the beast. The woman straddling the beast. The world will worship them. Wow. I mean, that's saying something. Rapid militarization is, they argue, the task of the next German government. These demands are spelled out in the current issue of this publication. It says its cover story is entitled, What the World Expects from Germany After the Election. One contributor writes, for example, that the next government must prepare society for Germany to become the leading European power diplomatically and militarily. See, no problem with any of that. But if Elon Musk reveals a lot of fraud and waste in U.S. government spending, he is to be persecuted. He is to be chased down. He is to be assassinated, if possible. They tried to do it with Trump twice last year. Have we forgotten about this? Like I say, where is the DOJ? Where is the DOJ unleashing what Merrick Garland said about J6, the largest investigation in the history of the DOJ? They were so proud of going after the opposition. And now here the opposition's on the other side. And you look at the DOJ and, well, it's kind of like the Epstein files. We're still waiting. We're still waiting for a breath of fresh air. We're still waiting for change. We're still waiting for fairness and justice for all, not just one side or the other. Further on this piece, again, this is from GermanForeignPolicy.com. A Bundeswehr capable of war. It says, while Janning insists on addressing the question of a common defense to save the EU, this other advisor is more concrete. He wants any future German government to realize that Germany must renew the foundations of its security and defense policy, and that it is a Bundeswehr capable of fighting a war. We need to go all in. We need to up taxes to pay for this. We need to cut spending in social programs. We need a strong military. We need to lead the way. Change in mentality, further on. It says, according to Tekau, the next German government must prepare the Germans and Berlin, the Berlin bubble, and itself for turning Germany into the leading European power, diplomatically and militarily. I read a little bit of that earlier. Just coming back to some of these critics, it's really astounding. Well, before I get to that, maybe one final quote here. It says, Frank believes that thanks to the war in Ukraine, Germany has a window of opportunity in terms of public attention and willingness to deal with the defense and military. She insists that the next government use this to lay important foundations before the mood shifts, and concludes, now is the time for political leadership. So there's a sense of urgency now about rebuilding the German military machine, a sense of urgency that you haven't seen since World War II, really. NATO, remember, it was designed. One of the founders said from the very beginning, the purpose of NATO is to keep the Americans in, keep Russia out, and keep Germany down. Nobody wants to keep Germany down anymore. There's quite a few people watching this show that think Germany isn't even to blame for the first two world wars. So they're going to be part of the audience that worships the beast, no doubt. That's a strong word, worship. My father wrote, you should get Daniel Unlocks Revelation. I don't think I've referred to that in quite a while, but this is one of my father's booklets from several years ago. Powerful, powerful message. But in this, he talks about how the Worldwide Church of God ministers, those who would become Laodicean ministers, that they were trying to describe the events of World War I or what led up to it as if it was just sort of all of these events that happened. There were no real personalities involved, certainly not. But just the unfolding of events triggered the war. No, my father says, you better assign some blame. Because these wars don't just spontaneously happen. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Francis Ferdinand, heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, is assassinated. This is quoting one of the Worldwide Church of God publications. This was right around the time of Mr. Armstrong's death in the mid-'80s. The Archduke is assassinated by a Serbian in the Balkan town of Sarajevo. The great power, listen to this, the great powers are caught in the webs of their alliances. The bloody event triggers World War I. So the powers are just kind of caught up in their webs. The bloody events, this assassination, it triggered World War I. Is this true? Do bloody events trigger wars? My father says what actually happened was Germany goaded Austria and Hungary into increasing their demands on Serbia to the point where the Serbs couldn't possibly meet them. And that led to the war. This was another attempt by Germany to resurrect the Holy Roman Empire. That thinking has been there since the time of Justinian. It's been there. Winston Churchill knew all about it. That's why he was sounding the alarm even while in the wilderness politically, saying it's in their history. It's just what they've done. 7 resurrections of the Holy Roman Empire. It's all prophesied. Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, Revelation 17. This booklet goes into a lot of that. If you don't have a copy, make sure you call our operators today and request your free copy of Daniel Unlocks Revelation. I can remember so many World Tomorrow programs from Mr. Armstrong, where he would often go from Daniel to Revelation and back. So many of those programs were his most popular shows. It is exciting to understand prophecy, but as my father brings out in this booklet, you have to keep God at the center. You can't get just caught up into the nitty-gritty details of the Daniel 2 image or the beasts of Daniel 7 and forget about the kingdom of God that's going to crush the Daniel 2 image in the feet and bring it toppling down. And then the kingdom of God grows to fill the earth. That's what's coming. And what a wonderful blessing it is to have a great God above who tells us even about all the events to lead up to that blessed kingdom, that soon coming kingdom. My father says here, I am not so naive that I don't know who caused the First World War. I know enough about history to know that what this Laodicean minister said is a deadly lie. People who listen to that are going to learn the hard way. People are going to swallow a lot of deadly lies between now and the return of Christ, so much so that they'll actually worship the beast power. Well, there's verses in Romans 1 and 2 Thessalonians 2 that talk about people worshiping Satan the devil. I mean, he comes as an angel of light. He sounds like a perfect angel. He says everything just perfectly. And so there's plenty of worship for that system, for that movement, and plenty of hatred, plenty of contempt for someone that God said, look, I'll send this individual to save Israel because of all this bitter affliction. And look what Elon Musk, in support of Donald Trump, what he's discovered is a lot of bitter affliction. Hundreds and hundreds of trillions of dollars wasted every year. And then it's just astonishing to think that there's all the wrangling in Congress today to try to get this continuing resolution. We need another, no cuts in this budget. Just the same spending, trillions and trillions of dollars, trillions in deficit spending. And Donald Trump saying, well, we've got to. We've just got to get through to September or October, and then we'll finally get serious about making cuts. This is what they've been saying for decades. The inability. Here Elon Musk comes, does a great service to his country. As he says there, it's almost impossible for him to run his own companies. He's discovering all this fraud and waste, and you would think Mike Johnson would be working with Republicans to say, okay, we're going to defund these agencies that have been spending tens of billions of dollars on nothing or on woke policies or giving it to their cronies. But no, the money goes out just the same. And then you've got the Trump people assuring us that eventually we'll get around to the cuts. Well, we'll see. Someone in Congress today was saying, look, this is like turning around an aircraft carrier. It's not a speedboat, so you just got to be patient. But look, as Elon Musk has said, we're going bankrupt. Let's turn the aircraft carrier around as quickly as possible. How about that? America's going bankrupt. America's burying its oncoming generation under trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. And yet you listen to these talking heads gleefully talk about setbacks that Donald Trump has or that Elon Musk has. What did the New York Times say today? I'm all over the map by this point. Talked about how Donald Trump promised this, wealth, etc. But look at where we are. Trump promised Americans booming wealth. Now he's changing his tune. Yeah, now I guess we've got to brace ourselves for a recession. There's another headline saying that, well, maybe it's in one of my clips, where the guy says that what Donald Trump inherited as far as the economy goes was pretty much perfect. Perfect? On what planet are these people living? The skyrocketing costs for everything? Unlimited spending for government agencies? And now Trump gets in there and he wants to fundamentally realign America's economy and open up free markets. And he's finding some resistance. And the stock market's plummeting. And this is exactly what the radical left loves to see. Go after Trump on the economy, just like they did with COVID. Try to destroy the Trump economy. Make him look bad. Do anything you can to destroy him. And meanwhile, applaud the rebuilding of the German military machine. In fact, worship that. Worship that system. It says here, that, coming back to my father's piece, that is reasoning of Satan, protecting his number one tool, the Holy Roman Empire. The Laodiceans were commanded to conquer the devil, as Christ did. Instead, Satan conquered them. Satan loves it when we water down the warning message. And we just talk nice about these satanic systems that are forming right before our eyes. In fact, just get down and worship them. Praise them. Encourage them. Negotiate with them. It says, when America works with Europe today, its leaders act in total ignorance of history. Germany has a history of being dangerous when you least expect it. To say the war started because the powers were caught in the webs of their alliances is to say that nobody's at fault. It just happened. Nobody could help it. Nobody could stop it. You can't blame Germany or Austria or Britain or France or Russia. You can't blame anyone. You cannot assign blame. That's exactly what the devil wants. It says, the worldwide church of God fell apart and few are willing to assign blame as God does. Mr. Armstrong died and everything just fell apart, they say. You know how these things go. Not much you can do. We just can't help it. We just can't get in there and solve the problem. We just can't assign the cause of this worldwide destruction. Well, coming back to Tesla, I want to get into the interview that Elon Musk had with Larry Kudlow yesterday. Had some really interesting things to say about what he's doing, how transparent it is at doge.gov. He's posting all the receipts there so that everyone can see what he's doing, see what he's uncovering. He's being completely transparent. And yet look at what he's being subjected to right across the nation. We'll get to that and more when we come back. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We'll be right back.
daily news, Bible prophecy. See the connection on the Trumpet Daily. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the flood of news and information? You need something to sift the news and bring you only what matters most. You need the Trumpet Daily. You also need something to help you understand not just what's happening now, but what will happen next. You need the Trumpet Daily. Only the Trumpet Daily accurately matches daily news to precise Bible prophecies. Because Bible prophecy is the only tool up to the task of sifting the news down to what's important and showing you what will happen next. Join host Stephen Flurry every weekday. Go to trumpetdaily.com.
They're setting fire to various Tesla charging stations near Boston. Shots were fired at a Tesla dealership in Oregon. Various nonviolent...
Shots fired, not a metaphor.
Shots fired, yes. Downtown New York, marching against the Tesla showroom. Your stock is way down. You've been criticized left and right.
But look on the right side.
I mean, why are you doing this?
Always look on the bright side of life.
Someone said that just with the stock drop, that he's lost something like $100 billion. Who else in the country has made sacrifices like that financially? It makes me think about when he bought Twitter, when people thought he was insane for spending $44 billion on a social media platform. Well, now look at it. Now it's being targeted by the radical left. Targeted. This is from Cyber News. It says, Musk commenting on the outage said his platform, this is the outage that happened yesterday, said his platform was in the process of tracing the origins of the attacks while, as typical, getting support and vitriol from users. He goes on, well, the article goes on and says what we played for you in the clip, that they're coming from Ukraine, of all places. That's right. And you would think that would be headline news. Listen to more from his interview with Kudlow, clip 4.
Yeah, it is tough sledding. But I think we're doing the right thing here. There's been a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government. When you're part of the government, you saw a lot of that, and there's been, if you look at the Inspector General reports and the Government Accountability Office, there have been many audits that have pointed out that there's a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government. In fact, there was a report issued by the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, last year. So during the Biden administration, which estimated the federal government fraud to be $500 billion. So just to be clear, that's not a Trump administration thing, that's a Biden administration thing. So what we're trying to do is get that number down to a much smaller figure, save money for the American taxpayer, stop money being spent on things that I think very few taxpayers would agree make sense.
All of these discoveries should have 100% bipartisan support. You would think. In another time, they would have. But as it is, he's the Nazi because he's uncovering all this fraud. $500 billion. So says Obama. Joe Obama. $500 billion in waste and fraud. And they're finally getting to the bottom of it. At least they're finally discovering it. Play clip 5.
And what is it that makes you choose, the Treasury or Social Security or USAID? How does it work? Let the public know, please.
Right. Well, we just basically follow the money. We look at the president's executive orders, and we also just follow the money. So we started looking closely at USAID because they were completely violating the president's executive orders to suspend foreign aid, what's called foreign aid, but in our view is a lot of corruption. So what we saw there is just a tremendous amount of money being sent to non-governmental organizations. But actually, this, by the way, is, I think, one of the biggest sources of fraud in the world, is government-funded non-governmental organizations. This is a gigantic fraud loophole where the government can give money to an NGO, and then there are no controls over that NGO. So they've given billions of dollars, in fact, we estimate tens of billions of dollars, to NGOs that are essentially scams.
Yeah, it's worse than that. They're left-wing NGOs. So it's to carry out the left-wing propaganda, the left-wing narrative, to carry out the left-wing agenda. And this is why they're freaking out at USAID or wherever else. This is why there's mass layoffs, or rather they're walking away, they're resigning at some of these NGOs or agencies. Once the money, like he says, follow the money. How do you decide, says Kudlow? Where do you look first? Well, look at where the money's going, and kind of off into the shadows. You shine some light on it, and lo and behold, look at what you discover. It's all over the place. It's not even confined to America, as I covered last week. It's all over the world. This kind of corruption, this kind of waste, this kind of fraud. Listen to clip 6.
We're really helping the department get a handle on things, because what actually happens here is you've got this sort of vast federal bureaucracy, and then you've got a very thin layer on top of the politically appointed officials. And what tends to happen is that the bureaucracy, frankly, is in control. And they largely ignore the politically appointed people. Yeah.
It's like a permanent bureaucracy. I might add, it's a permanently liberal bureaucracy.
Yes, very much so.
And it's not a bureaucracy that necessarily enforces or implements presidential policy.
They don't. In fact, they try their best to thwart presidential policy. So the president is the elected representative of the people. And if the president cannot get things implemented as a reflection of the will of the people, then what we have is not a democracy, we have a bureaucracy. We have rule of the bureau, not rule of the people.
The world of the bureau, running the show, running the country. And so they're going after this man. He's the Nazi. He's the one and when you ask them, he even brought this out in the interview. When people come up and say, you can't do this. What you're doing is wrong. It's Nazi-like. And he'll just answer back saying, what specifically is unlawful or not right? And nobody can know. They cannot point to specifics. Because like he says, we've posted all the receipts. We're showing you what we're shining the light on. We're showing you the fraud and the waste that's being exposed. And so they're just caught up into this satanic frenzy of resistance. And it's always, always carefully coordinated. As I said, the left, the radical left, they do seem like they've regained their footing to some degree. They have been shattered as far as their power goes. But we know Ezekiel 4 and 5 speak to the coming civil war. They're not going to take this line down. I mean, they're going to fight. And so many of them are agitating for violence. This was from Friday's episode of The View, Sunny Hostin. Listen to what she had to say about the Trump speech that he gave last Tuesday, and then the Al Green guy that stood up with his cane. He was like waving his cane at President Trump, saying, "You don't have a mandate," shouting him down. They had to escort this guy out, and he went outside, and he was proud of it. He was saying, "I'm preparing articles of impeachment." And then Sunny Hostin, to just give you an idea of how far left these people are. I mean, she is in lockstep with that representative, Al Green, of all things. And listen to her as she says what the other Democrats in that chamber should have done. Clip 10.
I was looking for signs of an opposition party, which is what the Democratic Party must be at this point, not a resistance, because resistance is passive. Opposition is active. And I think that what I saw when Representative Al Green stood up and said, you don't have a mandate to take away Medicaid, and he was tossed out. I expected the rest of his Democratic caucus, the rest of his colleagues to walk out with him. Because alone you can survive, but together you thrive. That is the energy that we need. They should have stood with him in solidarity. And we had Karine Jean-Pierre here on this show yesterday, and she said we have to have a sense of urgency as we move forward, and we cannot do it the way we have in the past. This is not normal. It is a five-alarm fire. And what I want to say to the Democrats is you can't play by the rules with a party that has thrown away the rule book. That's right. You cannot do it.
How have they thrown away the rule book? You can't play by the rules? You've got to take action? You're the opposition? Just try to imagine last year, in the heat of the campaigning, try to imagine some conservative saying exactly this in support of Donald Trump. I mean, look at what they tried to pin on Trump for a relatively peaceful protest at January 6th. Why, he's stirring up insurrection. They have such a different standard for themselves. I mean, Joe Scarborough this morning, he's talking about the economic bloodbath on Wall Street. I'm old enough to remember that when Donald Trump talked about an economic bloodbath, he was actually calling for violence in the streets. These people can't even remember what they said themselves about, you can't use the word bloodbath. And then here they are today using it. So there you go. Marco Rubio, I mentioned, he's going back to assigning blame. Hopefully he goes into these negotiations with Russia and Ukraine, understanding that there was an instigator, that there is someone to blame for all this territory that now Ukraine's going to have to cede to Russia, evidently, judging by Rubio's remarks. Now his people are saying both sides are going to have to, compromise. But he says Ukraine's going to have to give up territory. I mean, this, as I said recently, the groundwork for this has been laid for decades of appeasement. And now we're seeing the final result of it all. Putin's going to get what he wants. At least he's going to get the bare essentials of what he wanted there in eastern Ukraine together with Crimea. But he's the one that started it. Zelensky is right about that. Listen to this, though. This is from, I guess we can probably skip that. It's a guy who basically says in some ways the Ukrainians are more American than Americans are. We got to stick by them. We've got to study. I don't think that's going to set well with a lot of Americans. Ukrainians are more American than Americans are? Okay. This story yesterday from Fox News. Biden's auto pen signature appears on most official documents, raising concerns over who controlled the White House. Well, of course, you've got to go to Fox News for this story. Seems like this would be a significant story for Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC. Auto pen? What are you talking about? Can you even imagine if a story like this surfaced right now during the Trump administration? Yeah, he's just on auto pen. He's gone AWOL. He's in the basement. And his advisors are basically running the government. This was actually going on just last year. The majority of official documents signed by President Joe Biden allegedly used the same auto pen signature, reinvigorating concerns. Well, there you go. This next piece here about the southern border. Where was it? Illegal border crossings have ended at the southern border. February 2025, just last month, the lowest month on record for apprehensions at the southern border. The lowest on record. Trump was right. Turns out we didn't need legislation to secure the border. We just needed a new president. Listen to this from Fox News, clip 9.
The Trump administration has taken that controversial CBP-1 cell phone app for migrants that the Biden administration was using, and they've repurposed it into a self-deportation app that is officially launching today. And we're getting an exclusive first look at it. Take a look. The app is now called CBP Home. It allows illegal aliens in the U.S. to register to self-deport. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why would an illegal immigrant want to self-deport? Well, DHS says if they leave now, they will have the opportunity to return to the U.S. legally in the future and chase the American dream. But if they don't leave, they will be found, arrested, detained, and deported with a permanent ban on entry into the United States.
You talk about just needing a new president to fix things. Here, the very app that invited the world into the country, the Trump administration has now repurposed it so that people that got in through this app are now being told, you might as well self-deport if you ever want to try to get back into the country legally, because if not, we're coming after you. And once we deport you the hard way, you're never coming back. You're never going to be invited back in. It's really amazing to see what some strength of leadership can actually accomplish. So many positive stories to focus in on, but you know the regime media, they're going to be focusing in on Musk is a Nazi and Donald Trump is destroying the economy. Look at, he promised everyone wealth and riches. And now here we are. What are we, 7 or 8 weeks in? And they're already ganging up on Trump over the economy. It's just perfect. The New York Times, I mentioned this one earlier. As a presidential candidate, Donald Trump promised an economic boom like no other. But 8 weeks into his presidency, Mr. Trump is refusing to rule out a recession, a striking change in tone and message for a man who rode widespread economic dissatisfaction to the White House by promising to make America affordable again. I mean, he's taking some bold, decisive action. Just look at the trade war with Canada. It's kind of stunning to watch. I mean, he is unafraid to take bold action. And so much of Canadian economic policy is socialism through and through. I mean, they're more aligned with the CCP thinking than they are with free market capitalism. This is what the Trump administration's going up against. And you would think more conservatives in Canada would be looking at this government, their government, saying, look, that's the main problem here. Hopefully we can sort things out with Trump later. But we've got to get rid of these socialist communist leaders. The one, I forget his name, the one the Liberal Party just selected to replace Trudeau. This is, the same government thinking, the same type of thinking. It's just an extension of Justin Trudeau. No change, nothing different. The economy Mr. Trump inherited was, by many standards, in solid shape. Okay, got it. What was the clip? The guy saying it was perfect. I think this is clip 12.
And I think Trump inherited pretty much the perfect economy from a macroeconomic point of view on January the 20th. There'd been a soft landing. Inflation was under control. The Magnificent Seven stocks were booming for good reason. And in 7 short weeks, he's turned America from the star performer into the laggard. It's hard to think of any other president who in that short a period of time could have shifted the markets from bull to bear as Trump has done in the last couple of months. It's remarkable.
It's remarkable how these people revise history. Think of the many months. Really, it went on for years. Everything there's a little blip here of inflation, but it's transitory. It's going to go away because we love Joe Biden, because he can do no wrong. And then he inherits, Trump does, a perfect economy. What did he say? Inflation was under control. There you go. Yeah, it was all perfect. And look at what Trump has done in 7 or 8 weeks. Now it's a disaster and it's all Trump's fault. That's the way they're framing this. This is Scarborough with the bloodbath comment earlier today, clip 13.
Right now, the anchor of CNBC's Worldwide Exchange, Frank Holland. Frank, bloodbath yesterday on Wall Street. Talk about it.
Yeah, very difficult day on Wall Street. Huge declines. You guys are laying out the numbers. I got one more for you. The Nasdaq having its worst day in more than 2 years, and $1 trillion in tech stock gains lost, just gone in one day. So you mentioned it. Two big factors here: concerns over White House policy and fears of recession, driving that sell-off that, again, has wiped out $4 trillion from the S&P 500, often called the broader market, since its all-time high that it hit just last month. It's been a very long month for investors.
This piece at the New York Post, it said the market's taking a beating, but it says here, ignore the stock market, Wall Street dealing with painful detox from government spending addiction. That's why the CR that they're debating over today is so disappointing. It's like we learned nothing from the COVID era spending. You up spending by a couple $1 trillion and then you don't rein it in ever? You just keep on spending the same amount, more even. Well, finally, it's at least the fraud's being exposed. Evidently, it's not going to keep going up, the spending. But that said, just give us a few months of a continuing resolution. Just let us keep spending a lot for the next few months, and then we'll get around to fixing things. In any event, this Post piece says Wall Street is puking big time, and the sell buttons are working overtime whenever the word tariff passes from Donald Trump's lips. If you listen to the fat cat community long enough, you'd think Trump has been in office 4 years rather than 4 weeks, and that a small trade surcharge on a car from Mexico is leading us into economic Armageddon. There's plenty of fake narratives for MSNBC to latch on to. He says here, I'm no fan of tariffs for lots of reasons, including I hate paying too much for stuff, but I've also taken enough economy classes and studied markets long enough to know that they're not the end of the world as we know it. I also know that the Trump economic plan is much more than tariffs. It's about tax cuts, deleveraging the federal government's involvement in the private sector and allowing the private sector to thrive. His point being that, you can't do that in 7 weeks. It's about unleashing the animal spirits of the U.S. entrepreneur through deregulation. Yes, what Trump wants to do and has to do, given the load he was left with, was always destined to create some short-term pain for the long-term gain. It says, so maybe try and ignore the stock market for a bit, or take some of your gains if you're in it. Either way, if history is any guide, the real economy that most people care about is poised to do just fine, given what Trump is planning, and eventually so will the stock market. Most, Main Street America, they're not in the stocks, and these are the ones that Donald Trump is looking after. He wants to bring prices down at the grocery store. He wants to rev up manufacturing here at home. He wants America to stop getting ripped off abroad with unfair trade imbalances. It says, think of the current U.S. economy as a junkie weaning himself off heroin, which is never easy. It's been addicted to the heroin of government spending, both monetary and fiscal, for so long that we're running $2 trillion deficits when the economy is growing nearly 3% with low unemployment, as Joe Biden spent money that we didn't have. The spending has to be reined in. It should be reined in today with the CR. Hopefully it will be in September. If not, well, we're going to go bankrupt, like Elon Musk keeps saying. He's concerned about America going bankrupt, and the radical left portion of America is concerned about Elon Musk being a Nazi, going after all of these wasteful, fraudulent government spending programs. As I said at the start, we have a lot to get through each day on this show, and we'll, I'm sure, have a lot more to go through tomorrow. But that's all that we have time for today, the fastest moving hour in broadcasting. You are listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. Thank you for joining us on today's show, and we'll see you tomorrow.